Well, a California lawmaker is warning drivers gas prices could go up by a few bucks as soon as next year.
December 2025. A 265-mile pipeline is bleeding $2 million every month, operating at just 23% of minimum capacity. The CEO sends an urgent warning to California's governor. Silence. By August 2026, UC Davis economists warn prices could surge by $1.21 per gallon. USC professor Michael Misha goes further, predicting gas could hit $8.43 per gallon, nearly double the national average. For 40 million Californians who drive daily, this isn't a distant threat. It's already in motion. The San Pablo Bay pipeline crisis exposes California's entire energy supply balancing on a knife's edge. A state that once pumped 394 million barrels annually now imports 77% of its crude from overseas. 2 refinery closures erased 284,000 barrels per day of capacity. California's oil production collapsed 74% since 1985. New drilling permits plunged 94% in 6 years. The buffer between supply and demand sits at 6.3%, meaning a single refinery outage could trigger widespread shortages. Here's what makes this different. California operates as a fuel island, cut off from America's petroleum network by mountains and ocean. No pipelines connect California to Texas, Oklahoma, or any major oil-producing state. Every imported barrel arrives by ship, taking 3 to 6 weeks. When the San Pablo Bay pipeline stops flowing, there's no backup. The crude that once moved at 100,000 barrels per day capacity now trickles at barely 15,000 barrels. When it shuts down, those barrels shift to highways, adding 79 tanker trucks to California roads every single day through rush hour traffic. By February 2024, Core Energy Infrastructure Trust filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The filing revealed $14.5 million in assets against $118.4 million in liabilities. An 8-to-1 debt ratio. Since 2023, the company injected $33 million into keeping the pipeline operational. None of it worked. S&P Global downgraded Core Energy to CCC, reserved for companies vulnerable to non-payment. By June 2024, creditors seized 89% of what remained. Shareholders were wiped out. Even after bankruptcy, Crimson Midstream continued losing $2 million monthly. Robert Waldron, CEO of Core Energy, sent a letter to Governor Gavin Newsom on September 8, 2025. Crimson is facing severe financial distress. Without near-term relief, Crimson will likely be forced to shut down the San Pablo Bay pipeline this fall. The letter laid out the mathematics. $133 million spent, $2 million bleeding monthly, volumes at 23% of minimum capacity. Governor Newsom's office received the letter. No public statement, no emergency action. The silence was deafening. Regulators moved, but always one step behind. In April 2025, the California Public Utilities Commission approved a tariff of $2.40 per barrel. Crude volumes kept falling. Within 2 months, the CPUC revised it down to $1.95 per barrel. By November, regulators approved a 26% rate increase. But with shipments at just 15,000 barrels per day, nowhere near the 60,000 needed to break even, revenue couldn't cover expenses. In late 2025, Crimson filed for emergency approval of a 30% rate increase, plus a $3.75 per barrel tariff. Desperate measures for a company on the edge. But PBF Energy, owner of the Martinez Refinery and the pipeline's last major customer, filed a formal protest. A 37% increase would push costs beyond what the market could bear. Higher fees would accelerate the exodus of shippers, not save the pipeline. PBF had watched Valero announce closure of its Benicia refinery by April 2026, and Phillips 66 shut down its Los Angeles facility in December 2025. With 284,000 barrels per day eliminated, PBF would soon be the only customer. Marine tankers offered better economics. The catch-22 was clear. The pipeline needed higher rates to survive, but higher rates would drive away its last customers. The first domino fell October 16, 2024. Phillips 66 announced permanent closure of its Los Angeles refinery, processing 139,000 barrels daily. The shutdown came December 2025. 600 employees and 300 contractors lost jobs. A major customer for California crude vanished overnight. 6 months later, April 16, 2025, Valero notified regulators of plans to close its Benicia refinery by April 2026. The facility processed 145,000 barrels daily, 400 full-time jobs and 200 contractor positions eliminated. Together, these closures erased 284,000 barrels per day, nearly 18% of California's total refining capacity. They eliminated the demand that justified the pipeline's existence. The refinery closures severed California's last major pipeline connection between in-state oil fields and Bay Area refineries. In 1985, California produced 394 million barrels. By 2024, that fell to 104 million barrels, a 74% decline. New drilling permits plummeted from 2,000 per year to barely 100 by 2024. The third quarter of 2025 saw only 2 new permits approved, a 94% collapse. As production withered, California turned to imports. Today, 77% of crude processed in California comes from outside the state. Nearly 2/3, 63.5%, arrives from foreign countries. 4 decades ago, foreign oil made up just 5.5% of supply. California now spends over $26 billion annually on imported crude from Iraq, Ecuador, Saudi Arabia, and Colombia. Every barrel travels by sea for 3 to 6 weeks. Dr. Emily Chin, energy economist at UC Davis, calls it a high wire act. California's refineries depend on imports, with 95% of fuel coming by marine tanker. There's no redundancy. No backup pipelines to Texas or Gulf Coast refineries. The margin for error, 6.3%. A single refinery outage or delayed tanker could leave drivers waiting for gasoline. If the pipeline shuts down, 15,000 barrels daily shift to surface transportation. That means 79 additional tanker trucks on California highways every day, 79 more heavy vehicles in rush hour, 79 more potential accidents, 79 more diesel emission sources. California gas prices face upward pressure. Economists warn could reach historic levels. UC Davis projects that by August 2026, prices could rise by $1.21 per gallon. The Phillips 66 closure triggers an immediate $0.40 jump. As Valero Benicia shuts down, prices climb to the full 1.21 increase. But that's the optimistic scenario. USC professor Michael Mish warns of prices soaring to $8.43 per gallon. At that level, California prices would double the national average. Energy analyst Andy Lipow forecasts a sustained 50-cent increase. More optimistic experts suggest 15 cents if marine imports fill the gap. But California's unique fuel specifications and complete dependence on waterborne imports create conditions unlike any other US market. The forecasts converge. Prices are going up. The only question is how much. Phillips 66 and Kinder Morgan announced the Western Gateway Pipeline in October 2025. The system would stretch 1,300 miles from Texas, delivering 200,000 barrels per day directly to California. For a state with no pipeline connections to America's fuel network, this represents a fundamental shift. But construction begins in 2027. With completion in 2029, that leaves California exposed for 4 more years. So here's what California faces. By spring 2026, the state loses 284,000 barrels daily of refining capacity. The San Pablo Bay pipeline, bleeding $2 million monthly at 23% capacity, moves towards shutdown. Oil production down 74% continues declining as drilling permits collapse 94%. And and 77% of crude arrives from overseas with no backup routes. UC Davis projects $1.21 per gallon increases by August 2026. USC warns of 8.43 spikes. Western Gateway won't deliver until 2029. 79 additional trucks will clog highways daily. Infrastructure failures are locked in. Refinery closures announced. Pipeline losses mounting. The supply margin sits at 6.3%. The pipeline operates at 23% capacity. The clock runs out in months, not years. California's energy future isn't balanced on the edge. It's already falling.